Okay, thanks everyone. We'll get started. Welcome everybody to the Business Renewables Buying Group webinar. First off, I would like to do an acknowledgement to country. Yarra City acknowledges the Wurundjeri Woi-wurrung people as the traditional owners and true sovereigns of the land now known as Yarra. We also acknowledge the significant contributions made by other Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people to the life in Yarra. We pay our respects to elders from all nations, past, present, and future. Thank you to everyone for joining us today and for your interest in the Business Renewables Buying Group. We launched the project last week, and this is a project we're really excited about. It's designed to bring together a buying group of like-minded local businesses to support them to work collectively to scale up their buying power, cut the complexity from PPAs, cut time and costs associated with going 100% renewable. The project's open to medium to large energy consuming businesses across the participating council regions with a desire to support our transition to 100% renewable electricity as fast as possible. We've got a couple of speakers with us today. We've got Hugh, who is from Darebin City Council and is involved in this project. He'll be talking to you about why the councils are involved in this project, what's in it for us. We'll run through that, and then we have Ian from One Circle, who will be the facilitator for this buying group, and we'll run through why the buying group and why now is a good time. So Aaron, can you flick through to the agenda for today? So we've got the introduction to the buying group. What is the Business Renewables Buying Group? The council's experience and roles, why we think we're well positioned to run this and why the time works now, and the experience of other businesses who've been through this process before. And then Ian will run through what is buying renewable electricity, what is the renewable electricity market, and why is now a good time to transition to renewables, and what's next. So Aaron, click through and buying group. Our goals for this buying group are to help businesses to shift from a price taker to a price maker for renewables. We want businesses to have control of their own energy and where they're going and how they're paying for it, or what they're paying. The purpose is to form a group to provide procurement scale that gains buying power, reduces risk for business. And the timing is to act now as conditions are favourable. There's more competitive choices of renewables coming onto market. Expectations from customers and others have increased, shareholders as well for the bigger companies. And leaders in the market have already done it and are giving support to others to join them. So with that, I'm going to hand over to Hugh to run through council's motivation and what's in it, why we're in this now. Hugh.
Thanks, Aaron. Really appreciate it. And just like Aaron, I'm really excited today about presenting to potential businesses who from Darebin, but also from the other councils that are involved in this project, because we see there's a great opportunity, and we just want to get started, I suppose, and help see where we can help the best. As Aaron said, I'm going to just talk to a few slides, I should say, just around why we're actually offering this particular project in the first instance. And I guess where we start is where our motivation is. And this is very much, led by two particular areas that councils across Victoria and indeed Australia and the world are really interested in. First off is around, climate change and responding to climate change. And as you can see in the graph, the little pie chart that we've got to the left on your screen, commercial and industrial electricity accounts for anywhere typically between sort of 40 and 50% of a municipality's greenhouse gas emissions. And we've used Darebin's as an example in this particular slide, but this is consistent across most sort of municipalities within Australia. And so there is a massive opportunity there, I suppose, and we also know that it's also quite difficult to shift those greenhouse gas emissions. So we are often looking at sort of opportunities where we can sort of provide those sort of interventions, I suppose, and that's been definitely a big motivator to start this particular project. The other one as well, and these really work complementary to each other, is around the economic development benefits that come from improving processes, driving down operational costs and things like that. Because councils do really want to see sort of a healthy, vibrant, flourishing business environment within their municipalities. And I've sort of drawn a couple of examples that we've pulled out in various sort of council plans and strategies, but I particularly like the one that that's down the bottom there for Moreland, and talking about sort of increasing economic activity, etc., through partnerships, efforts, and things between businesses. And I think that's really sort of reflective of this particular project. There's lots of councils coming together to help businesses deliver a whole variety of outcomes, both from a environmental perspective, but also from an economic development and financial perspective. Next slide, please. The other thing as well is that we wanted to emphasize is that councils are not necessarily without experience in this particular space. Purchasing renewable energy has been something that particularly Metro Victorian councils have been leading the charge with for a number of years. And we wanted to just make sort of note of two of those particular examples. The first one on your left, the City of Melbourne created a project about 5 years ago called the Melbourne Renewable Energy Project. And that is actually followed up with a second program as well, which they've successfully delivered renewable energy for a number of very big names in terms of businesses and things like that. And they actually pretty much set the scene for a retail power purchase agreement for renewable energy back in 2017. And as you can see with the the logos that you see, there's some really big names associated with those deals. And they've been able to actually accumulate approximately 5% of all emissions within the City of Melbourne under those projects and drive that down, which is a massive achievement. And similarly, as Aaron mentioned before, Darebin City Council led a project called the Victorian Energy Collaboration, which was looking for a very similar product that the MREP, or Melbourne Renewable Energy Project, sought out. It was a retail offer for renewable energy. And we actually worked with 46 other councils across Victoria to deliver a single contract, and it became the largest retail deal ever in Australia, and indeed the largest greenhouse gas emissions reduction project in Australia by local government. So we've got quite a bit of experience in this space and understand what it takes to deliver a project that is quite complex in some respects. Next slide, please. The next thing that we wanted to take note of is around the renewable marketplace in itself. And just to assure, those who are thinking about this kind of idea, is that the PPA offerings, or the renewable energy deals within Australia, have matured significantly in recent years. And we show this graph on this slide that's provided by a consultancy firm called Energetics, and they actually track all those various deals across Australia. And as you can see, there's not only a lot of deals being done and very large amounts of energy being wrapped up with these types of deals, both across Victoria and indeed other states. But there's also been done at the buying group level, where businesses have come together to form buying groups to actually seek these kinds of deals. And you can see some of the examples that we used in the previous slide there and their contribution. So what we wanted to emphasize was that there is a marketplace for this type of offer, and it has become particularly mature over the past couple of years, and we're seeing lots and lots of deals done. Next slide. And then finally, before I hand it back to Aaron, we just also wanted to talk about some of our lessons that we learned in actually being part of a buying group itself. what we found is that there's a variety of different benefits that you can get, but we sort of crystallize those into sort of four sort of elements. And the first one is around is around the economies of scale that you get through aggregating everyone's sort of buying ability in terms of aggregating your energy, but also you can lower your transaction costs because you're not all procuring the same or a new contract individually. You're coming together. And that has natural sort of, I guess, benefits from an economic perspective. From a risk management perspective, the concept of being able to share this amongst the whole group together and being able to, I guess, create a sense of momentum and also a sense of ownership around some of the I guess, risks around sort of going out and getting a different product, which a PPA will most likely be for most of the businesses thinking about it today. And this really sort of has two sort of effects. Obviously, it helps through being in a buying group, there's momentum in the project moving forward, and not necessarily relying on an individual to move it forward, but also the sense of being able to be part of a journey and make sure that you're playing your bit in terms of actually contributing to how the project moves forward. And that's been a lot of benefits for a variety of our sort of projects that council has been involved in. The other things to think about is around capacity building and how you need to build knowledge around the energy markets. There's no doubt about that, but you don't necessarily need to be an expert in everything in the energy market because everyone can bring a different set of skills to this particular project and you can all benefit from it. So that's a real sort of benefit as well. And the last one is just around the natural networks and the organic sort of relationships that you develop over time working in a buying group. And there's anything from the information exchange to thinking about other projects that you might work on together as a result of being involved in a sort of a group purchasing arrangement like this. So we just wanted to sort of set the scene saying we feel really confident this is the right time. We feel as though that we've got the right sort of relationships established. And we wanted to make sure that you felt comfortable is that we understand the content as well, because it is a sort of, I guess, the energy markets is something that may be new to a lot of you today. And so we just wanted to make sure that we're watching this and we're understanding a lot of these different elements and hopefully putting I guess, our right foot forward and helping you along the way. With that, I might hand back to Aaron to continue on. Thank you.
Thanks, Hugh. Much appreciated and really well put. Now, I should have mentioned to people earlier, please put questions in the chat. We have allowed a significant amount of time in today's session for questions and discussions that you inevitably have, and we want you to ask those. So just before I introduce Ian and One Circle as the facilitator, I just wanted to touch on quickly, with the experience we have, why did we engage a facilitator to run the project when, councils have completed 3 other group buys and have a lot of expertise in this space? And the first thing is repeatability. Historical group buys have relied heavily on a lead entity to take responsibility for managing the group, engaging advisors, paying advisors, following up group members, managing questions, and generally ensuring the group achieved its goals. This is very time consuming. There's also fairly ad hoc and highly resource intensive for the organisation who was leading it. Bringing in a facilitator enables us to bring in an organisation who specialises in energy procurement. They provide advice and they want to do this again and again. It's kind of their chosen job. It also enabled us to go to the market and get competitive responses from interested organisations. And I have to say, we were thrilled with the quality of the responses and the outcomes that we got. So for us, that was another sign that we really do think this is the right time to do this. Now we need to get the businesses signed up and on board. We hope this is the first of many group buys, and that we as councils in the future will be able to focus on having conversations with businesses and ensuring that there is a reliable and affordable, well-regarded way for more and more businesses to procure renewable energy. And hopefully we can bring those costs down so that smaller and smaller businesses can access the benefits that large businesses are getting already. With that, I'm going to pass you over to Ian at One Circle. One Circle is our chosen facilitator. They are extremely experienced in this industry, and Ian is a genuine expert and is going to run you through a little bit of who they are, but then also why now, why this is a good time, and why they're excited to be involved in this project. Ian, over to you.
Thank you, Aaron, and thanks also, Hugh, for that introduction as well. Look, it's great to be here. We're really excited. Anyone thinking about energy going towards renewables, this is just a brilliant time to be. The past 5 years, we've seen a lot of change. Prior to that, it was pretty tough to try and make this type of step. So we've come a long way. So we live and breathe doing energy every day. I love it personally and try and engender that amongst my company, of course. But what I'm wanting to do today, because clearly everyone's a bit different, there'll be some bit of introduction to some pretty fundamental concepts that might already be known by some, but then we'll go into a bit more detail around where the market is at presently, which will be a little bit more detail, and then on to the process of how we proceed beyond today towards the buying group outcomes that we very much are looking to repeat or better that Hugh referred to that the councils have achieved to date in other businesses. Thanks, Aaron. Next one. So very quickly, just about One Circle, the business which I founded and own, a private company founded a decade ago. We basically bring together a lot of property, engineering, and energy expertise. So we're very much focused on supporting businesses and organizations to get better outcomes on energy. Everyone wants cheaper energy all the time. There's no question that's an undercurrent at all times. Increasingly being greener, moving to renewables, and always wanting to be more efficient. If you can do the same job with less energy, that's a great outcome. So in doing that, our business does a lot of work across things like, of course, solar on the roof. People would know of that, of course, on large scales, things like shopping centres and schools. Energy procurement is a major focus, of course, buying energy from the grid. Also plant and equipment upgrades, better planning around their properties and management to get that outcome. And that's irrespective of whether someone owns a property or is a tenant, leases, if you like. There are still lots of things that can be done. So that's a bit about us. We work nationally. And as I said, a lot of commercial businesses, education and industrials are our bread and butter. So we always focus on the customer's outcome first in that regard and how these energy answers fit in to day-to-day business. It's a little bit about us. Thanks, Aaron. So a little bit of a basic concept to start with about talking about renewable power. We hear the phrase and we hear power purchase agreements, or PPA, variety of acronyms. Let me just start with where most of us start from, standard power, the power we buy from the grid. Used to be called black power, but it's not really 100% emitting power these days. About 18% of all standard power we buy from the grid comes from a renewable source because of the renewable energy target, federal government mandated target. That's the standard price we pay for power. We think of that as the benchmark reference price, if you like, because the vast majority of organizations are buy standard power, not renewable. And that's what most organizations are on. So it's the norm, it's the basic starting point. We're familiar with those contracts. Most people know standard fixed price contract for a year, 2 or 3 years. Maybe the price varies per year, or maybe it's averaged out over that period. It's a pretty normal situation, and typically prices up to 5 years in duration. Historically, it was more 3 years, but people have been starting to nudge to longer term purchases just to give themselves some more certainty, and sometimes also better pricing. Of course, there's no change on emissions really. Technically, the grid is getting a little bit greener, if you like, so there's small changes, but really it's emitting power, there's no question about it. And you're usually a price taker. Go to market, a bit of competitive process, which is good, but nevertheless, you're not in any major buying power. So that's the standard, what we start with. And then we talk about going to renewables, and I'll explain why you hear the acronym PPA in a second. We all know solar only works during the daytime, and of course, wind farms only work when the wind's blowing. Clearly, that's not going to cover all the power all the time. So you need to get power from other sources, such as hydro and the grid, the traditional coal, gas generation that we rely on in Australia. That also is the case, and the emissions from that will be offset. And that's how we end up with, let's just say, a 100% renewable product is by the heavy lifting being done by wind farms and solar farms, increasingly in Victoria, more and more wind. And then the rest from, let's call it, traditional sources. In the future, we expect to have a lot more hydro, pumped hydro in fact, and also some battery storage. That will come. Snowy 2.0, in other words, the additional pumped hydro in the Snowy Mountains, due in a few years' time. That'll be very interesting to see how much that contributes in that way. So when you buy, you're buying a bundled product. And typically to get a good deal, it's usually 5 years or longer in term. And that's what gives you a good deal. In part, a longer term to get those good prices. The other thing is there is an element of in effect, a mixture of pricing that goes into the eventual end product. So for instance, the solar farm and wind farm prices usually are fixed for the entire term of the agreement. If it were 10 years, it'd be flat rate for 10 years. But the rest of the power that comes from the grid may have some variable pricing built into that. So you get a combination that gets brought together into an eventual answer. Of course, renewable, 100% ideally, but you can have it in steps. That is also possible. So that's been what, when you look at those renewable deals that Hugh mentioned in the past, those PPAs, which are great to see, it's always been, nearly always, the bastion of bigger organisations. And that's been one of the issues. It didn't really provide the access to not big organisations. Medium-sized businesses still use a lot of power and pay a lot of money. And that's one of the reasons why this group buying initiative has been kicked off, so that we get a much greater access to these renewable offers. Next one, please, Erin. Now, by the way, I all means throw questions in, and we look forward to coming to it. We're going to get into some pricing conversations, which usually drums up a bit of conjecture. So firstly, about prices in Victoria. Now, as I think everyone knows, we're a connected grid of the eastern half, if you like, of Australia, with the exception of Northern Territory, so South Australia, and then up and of course across to Tassie. But looking back for the past 20 years, this shows the price and demand profile that we've seen. The blue columns being the maximum demand for energy, I should say electricity. The dark blue line that's going up and down is the weighted average spot price that we've seen in the market, with the orange being the average over the past 20 years. Long story short, Victoria's enjoyed, on average, cheap power. Definitely cheaper than New South Wales and Queensland, which has been great. Of course, the past 4 or 5 years has been a different story. As you can see, 2017, 18, 19 were much more expensive, more than twice. That was largely due to a few factors. Hazelwood's closure in the Latrobe Valley, arguably by many, a mismanaged transition out of coal power. We had our heat wave, of course, that was the hottest period on record. Bushfires that cut out transmission lines that had to be turned off out of fire risk, basically, and a lot of failures of plant. We had a lot of issues happen all at once, which kept those prices high. And then it came down. And that 2020, 2021 period, we had a little bit of calm before another storm, which we're going to talk about in just a second. But nevertheless, that 2020, 2021 period, in many regards, is seen as a potential position we'll return to in the medium-term future. Thanks, Erin. So now this looks like a bit of a detailed chart, But what we're showing here is the spot prices in the market. That's historic up to the blue line in the middle as of Monday, 4th of April. Here it was. And then the futures. The Australian Stock Exchange has an energy trading component, ASX Energy, and you can buy energy futures out for about 4.5, 5 years. And this tracks both the peak and the average price going into the future. So you can see that high 18 and in particular 2019 pricing that came through in the market, very high peak, and then dropped right down low at the back end of 2020 into 2021 and has come back up again. And we're going to sit at moderately that point, and you can see it diminishing down. Now, it's starting to lower. Literally, the past week, prices in Queensland and New South Wales have doubled or trebled for the next couple of years due to plant failure, thermal coal being shipped at 3 times its previous profit margin, gas going through the roof, the impact of resources globally over the past, the crises that we're experiencing around the world are profound, there's no doubt about that, as well as plant failures in Queensland that haven't been rectified. There's a bunch of issues going on that are pretty big. We're lucky in Victoria that we've been shielded from most of that. And these prices, as you can see, are coming down. The other impact on this is, of course, we're getting more supply coming into the market through renewables, which I'll talk about in a second. One other point of observation here, as you can see, the further you go into the future, the prices are lower. And what is not always the case is the longer the term, the further you go into the future, the cheaper the price you get. So that's one of the key benefits of these larger renewable deals, these PPA deals, is a longer term, and you get the benefit of those low prices as part of the deal. And you're shielded from a lot of this volatility. And that's another key feature of these agreements. Thanks, Sarah. So why is it really a great time to be buying renewables? I know that sounds like I'm an enthusiast and I'm trying to sell something. It's not coming from that point of view. It's coming from some really hard factual numbers. We have a superb pipeline of renewable projects being connected into the grid. On the right-hand side, that shows the chart of the renewable power stations and one gas power station that are being connected to the grid. These are scheduled connections, not wish lists. These are nominated major engineering projects and their connection, as well as under the line, the coal power stations coming out of the grid. So you can see the 2 steps of Liddell, 500 megawatts this year and 1.5 gigawatts next year, and the Araring in New South Wales station that Origin recently announced is going to come out of the grid. So that represents 4.8 gigawatts of generation capacity, but we've got 17 coming in. So while renewable is not the same as coal, clearly, but at that order of magnitude, more than 3 times more capacity coming into the grid, that's a lot of extra supply where the demand for power is not increasing in Australia. So more supply, it's renewable, it's giving us more choice, which is great, and more pressure on those developers of those projects to secure good customers for longer terms. That's exactly like any project. You want to secure a customer up front and sign it to your deal. And that's what they're looking for. And that's how we get good prices on these large renewable deals. Another aspect to those projects, which is the chart on the left, she's showing the renewable energy zones. So the state governments, in coordination with the market operator, are very much getting behind making sure these projects are connected and proceed smoothly. So some of the lessons of the past where it's been a bit challenging at times have been heeded and are being applied to make sure that that pipeline I'm showing on the right happens and doesn't get held up with, let's just say, the grid not being able to handle it or whatever other issues that go with that. So there's a lot of good effort to make these projects happen, which underlines that confidence we have around being a customer and wanting to buy renewables. You've got more choice, a much better price position and confidence that this is coming through and coming through well. So bottom line is, it's a good time to be a customer in the market. Next one, please, Aaron. So that was a little bit about the market, a quick whistle-stop tour, some of it high level, some of it jumping into a bit of detail. So where are we heading to next? Well, bottom line is, this is a summary of the process that's built on the experience that but we've all had. We being obviously Hugh and Aaron, referring to the learnings of council work to date, and of course what One Circle's been doing in the market. Right now we're at the stage of forming the group, the buying group. Today is a great example of a start, a webinar to help inform potential businesses that will be part of this. We'll be doing a lot more of this over the next 2 months. With a view in June, we'll be forming the group up formally. So there's webinars. Aaron will introduce some of the contacts, but bottom line is, this is the time to look, listen, learn, ask questions. There'll be expectations to share a bit of information to work out who's right, and we go from there. And then we form the group, and off we go in terms of working through getting prepared for the tender, and then running the tender process, and of course that implementation. Aaron, would you like to add a bit more on this?
Thanks, Anne. Yeah. So I think you hit the nail on the head. Where we are at now is the formation of the group, and we want businesses to come forward with their expressions of interest. The makeup of that group is then going to drive not only the rest of the timeline, but all of the costs associated with it. And there's a couple of questions in here from Quinn, and I don't, how much further have we got to go through, Anne? We've got one more slide after this, I think. The contacts.
Yeah, just the contacts. So
just the contacts. So now's probably a good time, whilst we are discussing the project process, and it ties in with the first 2 questions there from Quinn, to talk through some of these questions and how this is going to work. So the first question Quinn's asked is, how is it my business works across multiple LGAs? I'm happy to answer that one, because that one's an easy one. We completely understand that. In fact, we will potentially be able to accommodate businesses who work across multiple states. It's going to depend on the exact makeup of the final group, but we can definitely accommodate all locations, meter locations, different network operators within Victoria. And we expect to be able to also have offerings for the group for those who need pricing out of New South Wales and Queensland in what's the East Coast market, or makes up the majority of the national electricity market. So being across multiple LGAs doesn't impact your ability. If you have different sites in different locations, bring those in together. We're looking to support the businesses who operate in our local municipalities, and we appreciate that the medium to large businesses don't just operate in our local municipalities. So
I might add to that.
Yeah,
Aaron.
yeah, absolutely.
In addition to what you've said, it's really normal for any organisation to have all different shapes and sizes of sites, and from an electricity point of view, let's call it bills of different sizes. That's part of life. While there might be a few locations that have the bulk of the cost, when someone makes a decision to go renewable, they don't normally say, oh, just the big ones and I don't care about the little ones, so to speak. It's often the combined position. Sometimes it might be that because of certain business planning activities. So we've got to work with that. That's part of doing the job.
Yep. And the next 2 questions in there around energy use, costs of being involved, minimum amount to be involved. To Ian's point just then, they're interlinked, and we're estimating that the cost of advisors is going to come in somewhere between $15,000 and $30,000 for the businesses. Now, that's where your minimum energy use is going to make it economic or uneconomic for you. We can cater for smaller energy loads. That's not a challenge. However, if you're spending $50,000 a year on your electricity bill, and the group signs a 5-year contract, and the advisor costs are $25,000, that's 10% of your total energy cost, and is probably going to push your energy costs beyond where you want to go. But some businesses may be perfectly okay with that, because that's a price that they're happy to pay to move to 100% renewable electricity, and have done the calculations, and that is still a better deal than buying green power potentially. We don't know. That's going to be up to each individual business to work out. You will need to have a commercial bill, which you can tell if it's broken up and itemized, and you have demand charges and other bits and pieces on there. But yeah, I guess there's no simple answer to how small, but we do think it is best suited to medium to large energy users who are probably spending $100,000+ a year on electricity. But that'll be up for you to determine. And if you are interested, please send through an expression of interest form, and feel free to have a more detailed chat with Ian or your local contact in your local municipality if that suits. Hugh or Anne, did you have anything further to add to any of those questions there that Quinn's put in?
Yeah, I think the final point you just made, Aaron, is key. You've got to share some information so we can give you some clear guidance. So for instance, green power that Aaron referred to is like the simplest way of going renewable. You basically pay a cent per kilowatt hour premium on what you currently pay. It might be 5 cents a kilowatt hour, 4 cents a kilowatt hour premium on top of what you do for every kilowatt hour. That's a simple point of reference. Now, if it's a very small site, that's fine, straightforward. But at some point, clearly that's a lot more expensive. And the PPAs we're talking about are dramatically cheaper than that. And when timing is really good, the combined outcome of a PPA can be on par with normal standard power prices or close to. So bottom line is you can go renewable at the same price you would have been doing standard. Like, that's the ultimate outcome that we always work to. Market conditions don't always support that. Sometimes it's better than that. And that's the harsh truth of this but you end up with a much cheaper outcome to become renewable, as well as a whole lot of other risks are managed better. So that might sound another foreign language to some of the audience. And that's why we say, make contact. Our job is here to help explain and detail and work out what's right for you. And if it is, great. If it's not, good. You've got some more information to put in the back of your head, and still that hopefully will contribute to making some more informed decisions going forward. That's still a great outcome.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Now, Hugh, I'm going to toss this question to you. That's just come through from Quinn as well, and other people, feel free to join Quinn in posting questions, and thanks, Quinn, for the questions. As per your original slide, other PPAs, will this add to the total amount of green power into the grid like the Melbourne PPA?
Yeah, so thanks for the question, Quinn. Obviously, there's different PPAs out there that are either linked to existing facilities that are already within the grid at the time of the deal being done, versus projects that are yet to be constructed or might be mid-construction when the deal is done. So every project is different, so you'll be getting a different outcome. So I mean, one of the things that may be thought about by the buying group in the future is, what kind of project do we want to be associated with? And that's something for the buying group to potentially ask themselves and potentially answer. And some projects have definitely, like the first Melbourne Renewable Energy Project, they wanted that project to be new, yet to be constructed, and without sort of financial close. So it had to be that the deal that they struck meant that it was going to be built, and for no other reason. Where there's other projects out there that have just said, we don't mind where it comes from as long as it's renewable. So it depends depends for the project and what the motivations are by the group.
Yeah, and I think it's important to note that even if it isn't underwriting a new project, it's still adding to the demand for renewable energy and taking those LGCs out of that mandatory 18% and hopefully forcing other generators to shift their purchase of demand as well. So it's still adding to that demand and showing that there is a market there to underwrite all those new projects that are coming into or going to come on stream.
And it's a good point that you make, Aaron. If I could add just a bit more on that, is that by purchasing renewable energy and requesting that renewable energy to be associated with your buying group or your individual organisation, you take those, renewable energy certificates out of the marketplace so that nobody else can double up and make those similar claims. And that's what's really important as part of these processes, which is getting into the weeds, I suppose, in a little bit, but it's important to emphasise that that's the intent of these programs, is to purchase renewable energy, have that assigned to the customers within these buying groups, so that they can be attributed with the emissions reductions associated with that renewable energy generation.
Yeah, I might, if I may add, to be very blunt, we're talking about whoever signs up to this deal, it'll be certified renewable. No greenwash, whatever you want to call it. There's plenty of ways of, let's just say, gilding the lily. But the truth is, this is about 100% certified using industry standard renewable. It's not at all politicized what we're talking about. This is just hardcore. And by buying this renewable power, it's all results in renewable generation having been built and having providing renewable power. And as Hugh said, it might be existing, it might be new. That's a timing thing. It's all about it being guaranteed that that's the case. It's renewable.
So Ian, we've just had one come through in
I saw that that value, spending that quantity of month. Well, I think, to be quite frank, that there's a very important point, which is it depends what your tariffs are. And the tariffs are the key point here. And then we break down what's network charges versus what is energy. So you may have E. Perini, I'm not sure who that individual is, but hi. It depends what your tariffs are. So we will recall I was showing how the market prices have gone down and gone back up and then starting to come back down from a point. If you had signed your deal that had very high tariffs, for instance, I would say you should feel pretty excited about a great outcome. If you managed to secure a deal at that ultra low point, which we did do for some clients, it would probably be somewhat similar, maybe. And I'm really shooting from the hip here. But you're moving into a renewable position. And that's the key point, is what we find, to reiterate, the renewable longer-term PPA deals end up being similar to a standard power price. It can be a lot better or just a little bit above. It depends on what your current tariffs are. And that's why one of the key next steps is to share a bit of information that we can get into that level of detail, and for me to give quite a much more direct answer to your question, which we love to do, but without a bit more information, kind of stuck.
Yeah, so I think that's a great example of
wow. Just come up. Well, you've got to, excuse me while I get out my calculator.
I'll let Ian have a look and see what more he can answer here on the spot. It is a public forum, so you may not want to go into too much detail on that, but that's definitely a conversation that can be continued. There's another question's come through in the chat too from Jordan. How will this impact businesses who already have solar panels to offset grid use? So that question there, Jordan, your solar panels won't be impacted. Obviously, they impact the amount of energy you are drawing from the grid. So the PPA that we're talking about here will be for the purchase of energy from the grid. So I guess it impacts the size of your bills and may potentially impact the viability at this point in time, depending on how much you're still spending on your bills. We don't intend that the deal will in any way, shape or form preclude people who have plans to put solar panels on their roof in the future from being able to do that. They're all things that we are really confident can be able to be structured into the outcome of the group buy, and that level of flexibility that can come with being part of a much larger group. But if you already have solar panels on your roof, which is fantastic, do not in any way, shape or form think that that is not a great way and still the cheapest way to get your energy, because you avoid all of the network tariffs that go along with your energy. But it may, if it shrunk your bill to a level that makes it uneconomic, it may mean for the moment that this won't work for you. But again, we can only look at your numbers, send through an expression of interest form, and we can get into the details of that behind the scenes and work through if this is going to be something that works for your business. Hugh or Ian, did you have anything to add to that question around solar panels?
No, I think you summarised it well. The only other point I would add is, depending on the organisation, if you're wanting to get your electricity to 100% net renewable, the overall can say we're 100% renewable. Sometimes there's the question if it's a larger system, over 100 kilowatt hours, sorry, I beg your pardon, kilowatt of panel capacity, it would be earning LGCs, which are renewable generation certificates. If you sell them, you lose the right of calling that power to be renewable. So you can't sell them if you want to retain that status of the power being renewable in terms of the rules of the industry and what we're talking about. So that's another consideration. So, but all standard stuff, that's part of getting into the detail and sharing that. And if I may, Aaron, that one about if you participate, you get customized financial analysis, very much so. And that's what we're talking about with the advisors, both facilitator and energy advisor, and if or when required, legal advisor. It's giving you, in particular on the financial front, the exact answer of this is what it would mean. Also, and in reference to the preceding individual that kindly shared some tariffs, breaking all of that down, prices come in, evaluate that against present spend, load profiles, either present or if the organisation is changing a lot. You might be buying sites, selling sites, changing what you do, and therefore changing a load profile, including that in the financial analysis so that you have a very rigorous answer.
Yeah, I think that's a very good point. That's where the costs will go to, as Ian mentioned. That will be for the group to appoint the energy advisor and legal advisors, more than likely, and that will be, and they will do that financial analysis of what the deals look like, how they compare with other available deals, and what you can expect from a financial point of view. We know that is critical to any business who are committing to a long-term deal. That's part and parcel of it. What might we do to get our energy data in order so that we're ready for the next step? Ian, I know you want to answer this one.
Indeed. So accurate answers come from good data. Of course, there's always market conditions, which we can have futures and other prices. And when we get prices in, of course, we analyze those. First step, get your bill history together, recent bill, and electricity meter data per metered connection point. You might know this acronym called NMI, National Metering Identifier, or NIMI, people like to call it. My daughter laughs at me when I keep on talking about NIMIs, but nevertheless, with historic data that either can be obtained from your present electricity retailer or via your network, City Power, for instance, PowerCore, variety of the networks, you can do it there. So one of the key things is the follow-up. If you have, and that's what basically we start to do between now and signing up, is getting that information. If you prepare that, then that has us in a great position so that one can give you basically clear and accurate feedback on what it would mean, what if, accordingly.
Excellent. Thank you, Anne. Hugh, did you have any other points to add to that?
No, I think you've done a really good job, both of you, sort of answering those types of responses. I guess the other thing that we're really interested in is being able to obviously help you understand all of those sort of nuances around how much your energy spend is, how much you're consuming, all those types of things. But we also want to look at it at a group level as well, because there is also some relevance around the viability of the group itself. And, you know, have we got 2 businesses interested? Have we got 20 businesses interested? And so going through that step of providing your information for the purposes of understanding the buyers group is really beneficial for us as sort of organisers of the group, and certainly for Ian and the team at One Circle, so that we can actually sort of go, okay, what does this, how big is this group? What are they potentially purchasing? So you know, that, and what kind of what's the energy data telling us as well? So there is, I suppose, we need that kind of information before we sort of make that next step, I suppose. And I think that it'd be really beneficial for everyone else to understand that as well, who they're working with, potentially, you know, what are the characteristics of the group, and we need that information in order to do that.
Yeah. And there was a question just came through on the chat. Is there an initial buy-in fee for the initial bit? No. I guess you would say that's the bit that the councils are picking up the tab on. That's what we've engaged One Circle to manage and get you, you know, to the start line, so to speak. You know, there's no cost associated with registering an EOI and starting the conversations. The next steps when we get through and we form the group, the businesses who are interested in that point in time and who suit the model and the profile of the group will be asked to sign an MOU, and that MOU will at that point commit them to the costs associated with each step along the process from there, and that will include the go ahead to appoint energy advisors, appoint legal advisors, start preparing tender documentation, have the energy advisors preparing business cases, having Ian and the team at One Circle step you through and working through the analysis of those business cases, but also the different tenders that come back and the responses when we get through, to take you all the way through to the completion of a full procurement. So, but initially upfront, now no cost in sending through an EOI, and as you said, we think this is, we're really excited by this. We think this is a great idea and a great opportunity for businesses, but we'll only know when businesses come forward and show us that they are interested in group buying and group buying for renewable energy and renewable power. There's one more question has jumped in here. I have colleagues in other organisations who might be interested, but not located in Yarra. So firstly, it's much broader than Yarra. So it is Yarra, Darebin, Moreland, City of Melbourne, EAGA, which is the Eastern Alliance for Greenhouse Action, and Scott's there and can actually speak. So Scott, do you want to name the councils associated with that?
Yes, I can. It's Burundara, Glen Ira, Knox, Maroondah, Monash, Stonington, Whitehorse, and Yarra Ranges.
Thank you. And also the Northern Alliance for Greenhouse Action is also involved and as a supporter. So anything Hume, Banyule, Whittlesea, in addition to Yarra, Darebin, Moreland, Hugh, which one have I missed?
We've got Banyule, we've got Nillumbik, we've got Hume, we've also got Manningham as well within that group as well. That's including Naga. So we've got quite a few councils. The other thing I think we should be honest with, Aaron, is that let's have people fill out so we know where they're located. We can then have a chat and we can have a think about whether, you know, the participation is relevant. And if we get 50 organisations, which would be great, you know, and one of them fell out of the area, I don't necessarily see that personally as an issue, but we'll treat it on a case-by-case basis, I suppose, and we'd rather cast the net far and wide to see what that interest looks like and then assess, rather than assuming no because they don't fit the bill in a formalised way.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And one of the things we're really conscious of, particularly here in Yarra, is we have a number of large businesses who don't necessarily manufacture themselves, but have suppliers and are looking very closely at their supply chain emissions and the like. And we know this is going to go for all of the businesses. If you want to introduce your suppliers and we can make that work within the group, you know, we are more than happy to try and accommodate them. We're not looking to exclude businesses. So, you know, we're going to do what we can to try and accommodate businesses. And we find too, if we start the conversation now, if it doesn't work for this group, it may well, and hopefully it'll work for a future group, as we want this to become a recurring theme and we want to get broader and broader participation, more councils interested, hopefully get other people, other organisations running group buys as well, potentially industry groups and things like that. We think makes a lot of sense, where they can get together a lot of businesses who will have similar demand profiles and similar challenges.
I might say it's about being inclusive.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah. Ian, there's a question here around a poor power factor. Can I get you to answer that one? What if you have a poor power factor?
I'm afraid to say what that simply means it won't change the amount of electricity really you need to buy, but it does change your network charges very significantly. That's probably something we should follow up. And what I would suggest is register interest, and we'll go into a lot of detail in that. I've had research projects conducted with universities around power factor. So yeah, it plays mischief and it affects your bill a lot, not necessarily how much electricity you need to buy from the grid. So that's a short answer for something that can get pretty technical pretty quickly. I would say there's also the, Aaron, you might have seen the one from Quinn again about more presentations, webinars. Over to you to talk about that next step.
Yeah, so Quinn, that's a big part of why we want to do the group buy, is we want to be able to support businesses with that messaging internally. We appreciate that it is not always easy. So yes, we're more than happy to have another presentation, conversation, Zoom meeting with colleagues from your business. This is an introductory webinar that we hope provides a lot of information, a lot of good quality information that people can take away and show their colleagues in the business if they're not the decision maker themselves, and stimulate those conversations and those discussions. And we're very happy to be involved in those follow-up conversations. So yeah, I am really conscious it has just gone 2 o'clock. We have reached our hour limit. Have we got any more questions in here? No, it looks like we're pretty clear. So Aaron's just put up the last slide, which is to say thank you very much to everyone for your interest in this project. We're really excited about it. The next step, please send through EOIs, reach out. We have the contact details up there for all the participating regions, although the bottom bits are off. Trust me, they are on that slide. We will email this presentation through to all of the participants here today. Please feel free to share that. We have also taken a recording of the presentation, which we will upload onto the website. So if there's any more information or detail or things you want to revisit from here, you should be able to find it online. But, you know, it's also, we're very happy to reach out and have conversations with people. That's what we're here to do. We want to get businesses involved and signed up to this group buy, because we think there's a great opportunity to do something really good. Thank you very much to everyone. We'll leave it there.